There's been a lot of talk as of late about the Detroit Pistons trading one of or even multiple of their young core members, but there hasn't been a lot of talk about what if the Pistons keep all of them again? How do you build around them to really put a winning product? I have a chance at putting a winning product on the floor next season. We'll break that down in today's episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast.
You are Locked On Pistons, your daily Detroit Pistons podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's the deal? Welcome back to another episode of the Locked On Pistons podcast. Per usual, I'm your host, Kuka Hill. You can find me over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. There's another great way to support the podcast. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Is Jalen Duren catching a little bit too much flack from the fan base? We'll talk about that a little later. And should Monty Williams be returning as the head coach next season? Is there any world where he actually gets fired this offseason? We'll talk about that a little later as well. But what we're going to start off with is talking about the Pistons' young core, but in a different light from what I think they've been talked about as of late. And I've talked a lot about it where it comes to potentially trading a Jaden Ivey, potentially trading a Jalen Duren, maybe trading multiple of the young core guys to try to take the next step next season, knowing that this past season was so bad that the Pistons seem basically forced into having to make these moves to salvage whatever they possibly have with Cade Cunningham and whoever else they want to keep with them, to have a chance to be I don't want to say a winning team, because I don't think they'll be above 500 next year no matter what, but around a 35 win team next year. I think that is what they want to be next year, need to be next year. So a lot of people, including myself, have talked about trading maybe an Ivy, maybe a Duren to go get another piece. But what if Troy Weaver stays as the general manager and they decide to not move any of the young core guys, and they want to bring back Ivy with Duren, with Ausar, with Isaiah Stewart around Cade Cunningham? What if they decide to do that? Is there a pathway forward where if you do that, you can still be hovering around 35 wins next year? You can still make this big step next year that everyone wants to see. I think the answer is yes and no. I think it's maybe. I think that's the best I can give right now. The first answer, or the first thing we need to dive into, is how would you build around them in the starting lineup if they are starting for you guys or for the Pistons next year? And I'd have to assume that if they brought everyone back, the starting lineup would have to be, I just can't see them starting. Let's just put it this way. I think this is the best way to do it without me fumbling all over the place. If they come back next year starting Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren, they're not serious about winning. It's just not going to happen. You can't start all five of them. They don't make much sense. They're not going to play well. You're not being serious about winning. So one of them got to be coming off the bench at the very least. And I assume that would be Isaiah Stewart. And the recipe to playing around the other four is what we saw for the brief stretch with Simone Fontecchio. In those 113 minutes we saw with Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Ausar Thompson, Simone Fontecchio, and Jalen Duren, they were outscoring teams by 3.90 points per 100 possessions. So, they were winning their minutes. Is it something that actually would last after a full season worth of data? We'd have to see. 113 minutes isn't just terribly small, but it's not terribly big either. So how would it last for an entire season? Who knows? Who knows how it would go? But that's the recipe that if you were to go that route, the fourth or the fifth guy in that rotation needs to be a movement shooter who is capable of playing defense. And if you want me to be honest, I love Simone Fontecchio. I think he's a good fit. But if they are expecting to just bring all those guys back and then start these guys, you probably need someone better than Simone Fontecchio starting at that position if you want to be a near 35-win team next year. That's probably what you're dealing with in that point, or in that pathway. Another thing that they could do, if they do want to bring back all the young guys, when I say all the young guys, I mean Cade, Ivey, Ausar, Duren, Stu, I said Ivy, right? Yeah, Ivy. And then you got Sasser. You got Grimes off the bench. If they want to bring all those guys back, what's the other thing they can do? Well, in that situation, you need to consider bringing some of them, more than one, off the bench. Where you bring in a 2 guard who maybe starts over Jaden Ivey. You bring in a 5 that starts over Jalen Duren. And Ivy and Duren come off the bench next year. And they're forced to actually play better than the guys you bring in to be the starters for that team. That's another route. If you want to bring those guys all back, go out and use your cap space. Use whatever assets outside of them that you want to try to use, if you have any, to go get a better fit at the 2 guard, a better fit at the 5, a better player at the 2 or 5, another starting power forward. Like, those are the only 2 pathways that I see that if you want to bring all of them back, that's the only 2 pathways I can see it happening where they can make this jump. However, even with that, they're 12-57 this year. It's tough to try to convince anybody that bringing back 6, 7, 8 guys from a 12-57 roster is going to translate to winning 35 games the next year. Like, that's 23 win jump without making any crazy additions. That just doesn't happen. It doesn't. So it's hard to convince anyone of that happening. Honestly. But I know people love the young core. I know people love Jaden Ivey. I know people love Jalen Duren. So if the Pistons do take that route, if they want to keep those guys and improve, they need to go out and get a really high-quality starting 4. They need to really fill out their bench with legit role players. Like, if you want to bring all 5 of those guys back, fair. Everyone else needs to be replaced. Fournier, gone. Maybe even Grimes, gone. Wiseman, gone. Heck, Sasser, you may need to upgrade from Sasser as well. Like, if you want to bring all of the core main 5 guys back, everyone else needs to be upgraded upon. Your bench needs to be filled up with nothing but studs. So you have damn near 6, 7 starters instead of like 5. You legit have like 7 guys on your team that you'd start, and you're just starting your 5. Like that. That's what they would have to do if they want to have a chance of making that jump while keeping all of their guys on their team. Do I think it's realistic? No. Do I think it's highly possible? Not really. I don't think it's highly possible. I don't think it's something that can actually, I wouldn't say has a high chance of happening. You just don't see that kind of thing ever happen without key additions, major additions being added to a team. However, if that's the route they want to go, those are the 3. Those 3 options I just laid out. Either you're bringing a legit starting guy at 4. Heck, you might need to do all 3 of them, actually. I said 3 options. They might all need to be wrapped up into one option. You need to get a key starting 4. You need to bench 1 or 2 of them and have them come off the bench. And then you need to fill out the rest of the bench with legit studs. And then maybe, just maybe, that team can still be a near 35 win team next year. And if they can be that, I think most people would be happy next year. That means you're probably maybe in the play-in. You're just missing the play-in. I think that would have people, thinking, okay, maybe this is back on track. I think that would be enough. I think most people, maybe not most, but there's some people that believe play-in is a must next year, no matter what. And I completely understand why some people would believe that. But I think most of the fan base probably would be okay with like near 35 wins, 11th seed, maybe 10th seed to get to the play-in. Is that possible with what I just laid out? Maybe. I don't think it's the likely situation they're going to go down. I honestly, if I had to put my money on it, I don't think they're going to do that. But if they do, that's what they need to do. Completely fill out the roster or the bench. Completely upgrade from every position on the bench. Consider benching 1 of or 2 of the young guys and having them come off the bench, and use your cap space to upgrade in the starting lineup at the 4 position, and if the situation that you bench some of those guys at the 5 and 2 position. That's the only options that could possibly happen. And even then, you might be stretching a little bit, but that's a positive outlook there. That's the best positive outlook I can give on this core at this point after a 12-57 season thus far. So let me know what you guys think. Do you guys think it's possible to bring all of those guys back and still be hovering near a play-in team after winning 12 games this year? Maybe they win more games, obviously, than 12 wins, but right now they're at 12 wins. Do you guys think there's a realistic future where you bring all of them back and they can be a 35-win team next year? If you guys do, What's your plan? I want to hear your plan. Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. When we come back, is Jalen Duren catching a little too much flack from the fan base, from people like me? Is he getting too much criticism? We'll talk about that when we come back. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They are the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. It's just you against the numbers. You pick more than or less than 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time over on PrizePicks. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks, and you can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest, most exciting way to play it. PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons and green goblins get you different payouts. You can now win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. And another great thing about PrizePicks, they offer injury insurance policy. If you get somebody in one of your selections in a football game or a basketball game and they exit in the first half and don't return the second half, that player is immediately rebooted. PrizePicks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy, and you guys know that it's that right there is a big lifesaver. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with PrizePicks. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free to available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Jalen Duren is a player who has come under massive criticism this season for the Detroit Pistons, especially as of late. Him and Jaden Ivey. And it's because, again, like we talked about in the first segment, the Pistons are 12-57. Everyone's looking for a way to really save this, to keep people happy, to take this next step, like all that stuff. Like, we know where we're at. And the first discussion always is, okay, well, do we need to trade some of the young core, and who do they trade it for? So Jaden Ivey and Jalen Duren, I think, have come under a lot of flack. My question is Jalen Duren catching too much flack? Are we not being fair to Jalen Duren? And honestly, I think the answer is yes. I think, myself included, have been a little too rough on Jalen Duren. Now, with that, let me say this. Jalen Duren has been horrible on defense this year. I mean horrible. He has not been good at all on defense. And it's extremely disappointing. It's extremely disappointing, especially after seeing him those first 3 games of the year. He has been massively disappointing his first or his second season in the NBA on defense. He's been bad this year. Absolutely has been. With that, though, I think that can be true and also acknowledge that he is a 20-year-old. He was the youngest player in the league last year. And in his second season at 20 years old, is averaging 14 points a game, 12 rebounds a game. He's shooting 62% from the field. If you go over to Synergy, he's in the 83rd percentile as a pick and roll man. He's in the 82nd percentile on offensive rebounds and putbacks. He's in the 67th percentile on transitions, or in transition, I should say. I'm sorry. Around the rim, he's in the 89th percentile. Like, Jalen Duren has not been good defensively at all, and it's hurt the team massively. It has. It's probably, I'd say it's close to number 1 for why the team has struggled as much as they have. If Jalen Duren was the defensive player he was in those first 3 games, the Pistons probably have 10 plus more wins. Like, I'm not even going to joke to you. Like, him playing at that defensive level was the reason why they were winning in those first 3 games. Had everybody excited. That right there was because of his defense. So if he was a better defender, the team would be so much better this year, even with how bad the roster was. I promise they would be. So it's fair to criticize that, but he has improved in some areas. We've criticized some of his offensive freedom because sometimes the offensive freedom, trends into some bad habits. I think that's more to do with the coaching staff giving him so much offensive freedom. It's okay to give him a little bit of a leash, but not you've basically taken the leash off and just let him do whatever he wants. And that's not good because that's how you develop bad habits. That's why you're seeing some of those bad habits come up. But even with that, he is finishing around the rim better. Heck, he's shooting, isn't he shooting, like, what was it, 78% from the free throw line? 77% from the free throw line. He shot 61% last year. He's finishing around the rim at a much higher rate. He's driving on guys from the high post. He's able to get all the way to the rim. He has a little bit more self-creation in that DHO spot from the high post or the wing area. Like, we've seen him do that stuff. We've seen that that's probably something that's going to be in his game long term. So he has gotten better as a player from year 1 to year 2. He absolutely has. He's improved in his offensive game. His footwork is incredible compared to his first year. He's taken a massive step in that. His touch around the rim has gotten better. He's still, I think, an incredible passer when he actually does pass. Now, he hasn't been doing that much of late because of, like I said, the bad habits that are being picked up as of late. But I think this is why this conversation, how bad the Pistons season has been, it's so unfair to everyone. And I mean everyone. It's so unfair to the fans. It's unfair to the players. Because now, because of the talk around trading Jalen Duren or trading Jaden Ivey in the offseason to get better, having to break up the young core so they can take that next step because of how bad this last season went, they have to do something to try to save this whole thing. Because that is the reality, sadly, that it sounds like it's probably what's going to happen. It feels like that people are saying said player or ex-player is a bad prospect, or ex-player isn't going to be good down the line, or ex-player can't be great. It's not that. Like Jalen Duren, that's why I feel like he's maybe, and that maybe too, Jaden Ivey too, like maybe him too. They're catching a little bit too much flack. Jalen Duren was the youngest player in the league last year. It is not going to shock me at all in 5 years from now if Jalen Duren is absolutely fantastic. Like, that would not shock me in the least bit. Not even a little bit. I honestly, I see it in his future. Like 5 years from now, I think he can be absolutely great. He can be. The problem is, no one's like, that's why I want to make clear, no one's saying that isn't the case. Like, no one's saying that, I think this is what like has some people scared, is that Pistons fans have seen so many players get traded or moved on from, and then they're good afterwards. I'm telling you guys right now that if the Pistons move off of Jalen Duren, that's going to happen. Like, when they trade Jalen Duren, if they do, like, he is going to be really good wherever he goes. Probably I have more confidence in that happening with Duren than Ivey, but probably with Ivey too. Like, if they were to move off one of these guys, they're probably going to be really good somewhere else. That's probably what's going to happen. The problem is that the Pistons are in year 5 of a rebuild or going into year 5 next year. Cade's entering year 4. He's going to be signing that extension this offseason. And after this past season, all of that combined is going to force the Pistons to have to sacrifice 5 years from now to try to save whatever they have now. Because if they don't save what they have now, there will be no 5 years from now. Those guys will be off the team anyways. If they don't save what's happening right now, Jaden Ivey, Jalen Duren, Cade Cunningham will all be off the team 5 years from now. It won't matter. So now, because of how badly they messed up, now they're going to be forced to save the now by giving up some of the future. And that's just how it goes. Like, I know people don't want to hear that. I know that sucks to hear. And it's tough. But that's what happens when your front office messes up how it has. You're now forced into this situation. And now it's put players like Jalen Duren in the crossfire where he's constantly getting critiqued. And some of it is 100% fair. Like, the defensive stuff is 100% fair for him to be critiqued on. It's been really bad. The bad habits that I've been bringing up, it's fair to bring that up. But at the same time, let's not act like that he's not 20 years old. Let's not act like that he's not improved from his first season. Let's not act like he hasn't had an over 16% jump from the free throw line. Let's not act like we don't see him improving around the basket. Let's not act like we don't see his improved footwork. Let's not act like we don't know he's a good passer. Let's not act like we don't see him improving as in the DHO and taking his own to the basket and being able to finish at the rim. Like, let's not act like we don't see those things. It's happening. And let's acknowledge as well that he's still a really good prospect. And if he does leave the team, if the Pistons do end up having to move on from him, he's probably going to be really damn great wherever he ends up going 5 years from now. Like that's all true. And that's why I'm saying it's so unfair to the players. Because if this season didn't go this bad and the front office would have just got some players this past offseason and actually made a team, this team probably would have won, like I'd say 27, 28 games. Everyone would not be feeling this bad about the team. And you probably would have been able to take a more cautious, patient approach. I think they still would have been making some big moves this offseason, but it wouldn't have to include such drastic moves. It's unfair. It's unfair. It sucks. But the overall point of this segment I wanted to say was, yeah, I think Jalen Duren is catching too much flack. He's really young, and he has improved in some areas. And just because the front office failed them and is now forcing us to harp on their weaknesses so badly because now they have to have a winning product next year, doesn't mean they need to. Maybe we need to relax on them and critiquing them as much because they are this young. Jalen Duren's 20, and he has an extremely bright future. It's not his fault the front office failed, and now they might have to move on from him too soon. Like that's not his fault. So what is his fault? Is his defense. Yes, terrible. Like I said, some of the decisions with the ball in his hands has been terrible. Like all that stuff has been bad. But there's been a lot of good too. And I think everyone agrees that he's going to be really good in his future. So I hope you guys get what I'm saying. Both things can be true. They're not mutually exclusive. So yeah, I do think Jalen Duren's been catching a little bit too much flack. And heck, if you want to say Jaden Ivey too, Jaden Ivey too. So, and it's just unfair. So it is what it is, man. It's been a tough season. So let me know what you guys think about what we talked about here in the comment section down below or over on Twitter @Kukio. When we come back, should Monty Williams return next season? We'll talk about that when we come back. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time, or you'll get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the price you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers at ebaymotors.com. So I want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. We're free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel @Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. That's another great way to support the podcast. Should Monty Williams return next year? Should he get a second season with the Detroit Pistons after, at the time, signing the richest contract in NBA history for a head coach? No. If I was the GM of the Detroit Pistons, Monty Williams would be fired after this season. I would fire him after this season. And again, these things don't need to be mutually exclusive. Monty has done a poor job, and for the first half of the season, Monty was given an absolute terrible hand to deal with. But Monty has also done a terrible job. And he's done some things that have left people questioning, people like us watching, why is he doing this? Like, why? It doesn't make any sense. He's had beat writers who usually aren't that critical of the team come out and write multiple articles asking basically, why is he doing this? What is he doing? He's actively telling us one thing and then doing the opposite in the games. It's like he knows what the right way is and then purposely chooses to do the wrong way. Monty Williams, in February, probably cost the Pistons 2 to 3 wins himself after those trades because of what he was doing with the bench lineups. And you could probably argue that he's cost them other games as well with the bench lineups. Just it was more flagrant after the trade deadline, but you could probably argue that as well. You could probably argue that Monty Williams cost the Pistons wins at the beginning of the season when he was starting Killian Hayes over Jaden Ivey, when he was starting Killian Hayes, Ausar Thompson, Isaiah Stewart, and Jalen Duren together at the same time. There's so many things. You could argue that that Monty Williams has screwed up Jaden Ivey's development this year with how he treated or how he yanked him around. There's so many things you could argue with Monty Williams this season, and I don't think you can come up with many good things. I think maybe the best thing he has going for him is that James Wiseman looks a little bit better. But are we just attributing that to Monty Williams? And look, let me share something with you guys as well. I'm 26 now. Yes, I'm getting old. That casket over there is looking at me every single day. And as you get older, I'll say this: as you become an older fan, I feel like you start to see things. You start to see things more clearer and clearer and clearer. And I've realized this year that a lot of people in almost every fan base hate their head coach. Like almost everyone always hates their coach. They always want to complain about the coach. They always think the coach can be better. And that's why, if you guys remember, you guys are loyal listeners of the podcast, which I appreciate you guys. You guys remember the first 2 months of the season, I was as fair as possible to Monty. You guys would comment on the podcast. You guys would tweet at me. You guys would DM me and say, why are you not going after Monty Williams? Because for the first 2 months of the season, I was trying to be as fair as possible. Because I understand everyone always just wants to blame the coach. And I really did think Monty had a bad hand. So I thought it's hard to really criticize him with the hand he's been dealt. But it got so bad to a point that even with all what I just said, the head coaching actually has been bad this year for the Detroit Pistons. It's not one of those everyone just hates the coach all the time. Everyone just wants to criticize the coach. No, the coaching job has actually been horrific for the Pistons this year. You want to know how I can prove that? Everyone nationally has been talking about it. Pistons fans have been talking about it. I've been talking about it. We see it. And the other thing that makes it clear is that the beat writers have been openly talking about it. They haven't even been shying away from it. Omari of the Detroit Free Press has been subtweeting him basically for the last 2 months. James Edwards, the third of The Athletic, has written multiple articles wondering, why is Monty Williams doing this? He's told us this, but then he does that. I don't get it. Like, we've had literally just about everyone possible criticize this head coach. We've had just about everyone, from fan base to nationally to beat writers to literally, you can't find one person. I think if you quiz the players on the team, you would get the same stuff we're talking about. And I think that's pretty clear with body language at certain points of the season. Some of the comments that have been made after games. There is not a single person that thinks that Monty Williams has done a good job this year. And in a midst of a historically bad season, not just a bad job, a historically bad season, I don't care that he's in the first year of a heavy contract. It's not against the salary cap. It's not going to stop you from spending money in free agency. Sayonara. Like, you got to cut your ties. You got to. And everyone, obviously, I think we all agree that the Pistons need to clear house from top bottom, front office and head coaching staff after this type of season. But I don't think that's going to happen in the front office. I think it should happen with the head coaching at least then. Like, it definitely should. Someone has to go. Everyone can't just return after this type of season. It can't happen. You can't bring back everybody. There's no way that you can have this season happen and bring back everyone. Like, what's the point? What's the point of results? What's the point of winning and losing then, if it just doesn't matter? So, yeah, if Troy Weaver's going to stay, then Monty Williams has to go. Actually, Monty should go either way. But if Troy Weaver stays, then, yeah, Monty definitely needs to go. So, that's what my thoughts are. Let me know in the comment section down below or over on Twitter at Kuka Hill. Do you guys agree or disagree with me? Love to hear from you guys. But that's all I've got for you guys today. Thank you guys for making Locked On Pistons your first listen of every single day. Free and available on all your podcast platforms. If you haven't already, head to the YouTube channel at Locked On Pistons. Hit that subscribe button or leave us a 5-star review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on. And until next time, I'll see you guys later. Stay safe out there. And until next time, peace out.